Hi, I'm John Borland.
And I'm Jo Clark.
Welcome to That One Word Podcast.
And today's word is criticism. So this is a bit of an inflammatory word, isn't it, John? We have a list of words and we're choosing them as we go. And I saw the word criticism and I thought we have to talk about that because it paralyses people. It causes arguments, fights, probably even wars. So
Yes.
So yeah, what made you put it on the list? And then I'll tell you why I chose it.
Oh, that's a good question. I think because in my work as a coach, where I often see people get stuck is with criticism. And I think there can be an avoidance of criticism. There can be people turning a blind eye to it, ignoring it. I think in British culture as well, we really struggle with it. I might be wrong about this, but British culture seems to me that if we want to criticise someone, generally we let them leave the room, and then we talk about them in a critical way when they're not there.
Yeah.
And I think I've learnt, and this is not a finished, complete job, but I think what I've learnt over the years is to embrace criticism more and more and more. But I think it's such a touchy subject, and we struggle with it.
Hard, isn't it?
Many people, myself included over the years probably, have made ourselves uncriticisable in lots of ways, or made it very difficult for people to criticise us. And yet I think there's so much good and benefit can come from criticism if it's done well and received well.
Yeah. Do you know, it's so interesting that, I mean, we're living in a cancel culture, so you can't say anything against anyone anymore, can you?
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's the kind of thing that stops me putting myself out there on social media because I don't want the flack and the comeback, even though we'll talk about how we manage criticism because I think that's so important. But then also, when you were talking, it suddenly occurred to me, it's actually really hard to give criticism.
Really hard.
We talk about constructive criticism, and I actually detest that term because construct is to build and to criticise is to take down. But we do need to be able to give feedback to people. And I guess what happens is it's how people receive that feedback.
Yes. Are you familiar with Kim Scott's work on radical candour?
No.
Okay, so
that I need to read.
Yeah, it's a book on radical candour. Kim Scott talks about this, and I think what she's cleverly doing is packaging an ancient truth. So her thinking, radical candour is this idea of giving really good, helpful feedback, both positive and negative, both praise and criticism, but obviously being incredibly truthful. So she talks about two things, that you've got to care personally about people and you've got to challenge them directly.
Nice.
And she says when you're only caring personally but not challenging directly, you end up with this ruinous empathy. So you've got empathy but it's no good, basically alone. And then when you're challenging directly but you're not caring about people, you end up like, I think she calls it obnoxious aggression. Do you know this idea that you
it does sound obnoxious, doesn't it?
You've just been a bit of a knob, aren't you? Just wandering around saying stuff because you've got to say it, but but you don't care about anyone.
I always speak the truth. That's what we hear.
Call a spade a spade, all that nonsense.
Whose truth are we speaking here?
Yeah, exactly. But I think what she's packaging is, there's a verse somewhere in the New Testament of the Bible, so 2,000 years old, and it'll be older than that, this thinking.
Of course,
where it says, speak truth with love.
Yes.
And I think that's what she's talking about. The idea that we're going to speak truth to people, but from a place of care, concern, compassion, love, hope for people that they can grow and develop. And that's where I think there's a really good side to, let's call it feedback rather than criticism, because I think we're talking about feedback here.
Are we? Because so here's the really interesting thing about, because we picked the word criticism, and like you, I've had to really think hard about what criticism is, and I'm of the opinion, my definition of criticism is feedback with which you don't agree.
Okay.
So
if you hang on, if you agree with it, it's not criticism.
It's just feedback. But criticism is feedback that you don't agree with. So I am.
Right.
My daughter's started a new job about 4 months ago, and she had her first interim review.
Yeah.
She rang me yesterday, and she's like joyous because it's really good. I mean, she's like, I'm so proud of her. She's absolutely fabulous. So I said to her, and this is really unusual because normally people start with the negative feedback, the criticism, but she was telling me, because she's ultra confident, all the good stuff. And I said, did they have any other feedback for you? And she said, somebody anonymously said I was a bit loud at my desk. And I went, well, that's true. So, because she's really loud.
Yeah.
But, you know, in an enthusiastic, lovely way. That was the one bit. She perceived it as something slightly negative, but it's also absolutely true of her. So it's not even really a criticism. It's just feedback that, you know, when she thought about it, she went, yeah, it's true, isn't it?
So I know we're both Friends, the sitcom fans, and we've talked about this before, haven't we? This moment that we both really enjoy, which is where Rachel and Monica and Phoebe. So Phoebe gives Monica and Rachel some...
I think Monica's high maintenance.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what Rachel is. But
Rachel...
unreliable or something, always changing her plans.
Yes, something like that. I can't remember.
Terribly
and
upset, aren't
offended, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then they call Phoebe, do they call her Flaky? Flaky. Yeah. And she goes, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Like that. And they're like, how are you all right with that? And she's like, well, I am.
It's true.
So is there an element here of self-awareness then? If you're self-aware of warts and all, like your positives, your negatives, or maybe that somebody sees something as a negative but you see it as a positive in you. But if someone's telling you something you already know about yourself, it doesn't feel like criticism.
Well,
it feels like feedback.
You might know it and not like it, and in which case I think it would feel critical. But if you know it and you're okay with it, you know, if somebody said, let's say, for example, that I was really bad at timekeeping and I try really hard to get everyone on time, and then somebody says to me, you're always late.
Yeah.
I think I would be affronted, even though I knew it was true of me, but I was trying to address it.
Okay.
So it feels harsh.
Because you don't like that bit about yourself.
Because I don't like that bit about myself. So maybe, and that's really telling, isn't it? Because I haven't really thought about that. Maybe we feel it's criticism when someone says a truth about us that we don't like about ourselves, and then we have to leap to our own defence, so it feels really, really uncomfortable.
But if you're okay with it,
then it doesn't
so if
matter,
you're all right with being late, you're okay with
your
lack of timekeeping, you're not bothered.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like criticism.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
So that's where it's feedback that you don't agree with.
Yeah, but if you don't agree, because if you agree with it, if someone like Phoebe's flaky, yeah, I'm flaky.
Yeah.
You're always late, yeah, I'm always late, that's who I am. But if it's something that makes me bristle, makes me go, oh, I don't like the sound of that, then I think it's something that's really worth examining.
I agree.
So I say to people, you know, they come for therapy and they say, someone criticises me. I say, so I chuck them a ball and they catch it. And I say, that's what we need to do with criticism. Rather than let it hit us and feel knocked over by it, catch that ball and look at it, examine it. Is there any truth in what's being said? Oh, I've got a lovely story, actually. It's just come to my mind. My foster son, when he was about 10 years old, he was on a sleepover. And I got a phone call from the parents of the kids' house it was, and she said, I'll call him Peter just out of confidentiality. So Peter's really upset and wants to come home. So I said, can you put him on the phone? He came on the phone. I said, what's happened? And he said, I heard the other two talking about me and they said I was really annoying. And he was so upset because it's a criticism. So I said to him, were you being annoying? So rather than just accept that the kids must have been wrong, because I know that Peter can be a bit annoying from time to time. So I said, were you being annoying? And he said, a little bit. So I said, so why don't you go and say sorry for being annoying and see if you can carry on with the sleepover? And do you know what? 10 years old, to his eternal credit, he went back to them and said, I'm sorry if I've been being a bit annoying. Can we start again? What a hero. What a lovely kid. So he felt the criticism because there was an element of truth to it.
Yeah.
What he needed was somebody to wake him up to the fact that there was an element of truth in it with that love that you talked about with Kim. That because I adore him, you know, he's my boy. I want to protect him and look after him. And, you know, a little bit of me wanted to go around there and say, how dare you talk about him like that? But that wouldn't have been helping him. What helped him was to get him to step outside and think about it.
I think some of the most helpful things in my life have been criticism.
Yeah, same.
When somebody's offered me something that I've not seen about myself and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things about this. I don't know where you want to go first with this, but one of them is, I think it might be worth talking about where sometimes people find criticism where there isn't even criticism.
Yeah.
Where I think sometimes we can find... I often find, particularly when my kids were little, parents would feel criticism when their kids had done something, like as if it was almost like vicarious criticism. Do you know? And I can remember teachers ringing me up and saying, your son said this, your son's... And I'd be like, yeah, he probably has. Yeah, you know, like, you're probably right. That's the type of thing he probably would say. And he's out of order.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? I'll have a word with him about it. I'm sorry that he said that to you, but he probably did say that.
Yeah.
I remember a teacher ringing me up and saying that one of my kids had called him a waffler. Said he's a waffler, which basically just means someone who's a bit boring and, you know. Yeah. So I went to my son and said, the teacher's rung and said, you called him a waffler? And he went, yeah, I did, yeah. And I went, you all right with that? He went, he is a waffler. Like he is. That's just how I find him. Yeah. So I've told him.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, my son for the life of him couldn't see any issue with it. He just felt like he was speaking truth. He wasn't speaking truth with love at all, though.
No.
He was just
there we go.
giving his opinion.
Yeah.
So, but it was really interesting. Teachers' reactions were often like, oh, okay. They weren't expecting me to go, yeah, he probably has.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably has done that. They were expecting some sort of, because I saw that quite a lot with parents often where they would, if their kid was criticised for something, they would take it as a criticism. When I'm like, there's no criticism there because my kids are...
It's true,
You're not going to have perfect children. No. They're going to do stuff. So,
we're so defensive though, aren't we? Yeah, so
So that vicarious criticism, I think is interesting, that I'd like to talk about. And then, do you know what I remember? This won't have been my first experience of criticism, but one of the standout ones for me was being 18 years old. I was playing for Burnley, football. I think it was probably my second ever appearance in the first team. And somebody threw me from a throw-in. They threw me a ball, and I tried to play it back to them, and it went out of play. And I'm right near the edge of the pitch, and a guy in the crowd who's maybe mid-20s, really big guy, really overweight guy, stands up and bawls at me and basically says, F off ball and you're effing shite, like from about 10 yards away. And I remember being 18 being like, whoa.
That's awful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that criticism or is that just abuse? And where's the difference? and where's the difference? Now, I got over that very quickly. Yeah. And I think my experience in football made me what I would probably describe as thick-skinned. So the ability to take that kind of stuff with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Is that criticism or is that abuse?
Well, it sounds abusive, partly because of the way it was delivered.
Yeah, there was nothing constructive about it.
Nothing helpful.
There's nothing helpful.
Nothing helpful.
No.
I think that's just expressing a pretty unhelpful opinion.
Right.
And abusive.
So we need to make that distinction.
I think that's important, isn't it? So then you think, well, so what is criticism? So I told a story in a previous podcast about my daughter entering a pageant and my friends really criticising me because they had a view of beauty pageants as they were in the 70s, which frankly I think were vile.
Yeah.
But things have moved on. You know, we're in 2000 and wherever we were at that point, 18, 19. So, you know, it's 30 years on, things do change. And I did my due diligence and I did my background, and their criticism of me, which I heard, and what I actually, to be honest, I found it really helpful because what it did was make me stop and think. And I thought, am I doing the right thing, supporting her doing this? What kind of due diligence research do I need to do to make sure it's safe and okay and isn't like it was back in the 1970s? So I was actually really grateful to them. And actually, as a result of that, as I mentioned before, I entered one myself. I had the best time, absolutely amazing fun, met some incredible women, and still am involved, 15 years later, still have friends in that industry. So I think if we can catch that criticism as a piece of information that if it hit us would hurt, and then think about, is there any truth in it? Is it helpful in any way? How can I use this information? And then you decide, do I keep hold of that ball? Because actually, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Or do I just put it down, or I could chuck it back, but that probably would end in an argument. Yeah. Because we do that when we feel really defensive. And do you know, ultimately in life, there is nothing to defend about ourselves except an idea we have of ourselves. There is nothing to defend at all. Yeah. It's absolutely fine that people don't like you. Yeah. And it's absolutely fine that people love you.
And you don't have to justify that.
And you don't have to justify that. Sometimes when people feel really hurt by others' criticism or not being liked, which I think is very tied up in criticism, they find it really hard. They want to be liked. They're people pleasers. So I talk to them about the normal distribution, you know, that bell-shaped curve. And I say, so let's just imagine this is a survey of people who like sausage rolls. You're going to have a handful of people who hate them, will never eat them. And you're going to have a handful of people who love them, and that's all they ever eat.
Yeah.
And in the middle is probably the rest of us. You go, sausage rolls, they're all right.
Yeah.
I mean, not my favourite food, but no. Now, if you think about that in terms of people liking you or not, which is related to criticism, you're going to have a handful of people who can't stand you. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a handful of people who adore you like you're the best thing in the world, and everyone else is going to say, yeah, they're all right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. If you start trying to get the percentage you don't like you to like you, you're going to lose the percentage that already like you.
Totally agree.
Because you become something different. And that's the problem with criticism, because I think we're quite sensitive to needing to be liked and wanting to be seen as good and maybe even perfect. A criticism shatters that image we have of ourselves. And so we either get aggressive and bat it back and we don't want to hear it, or we fall apart at the seams
and try and hide it, do something different, and therefore lose what's good about us.
Yeah. So I think the most helpful thing is to go, well, do you know what? This is quite helpful. Let me think about this as just an interesting piece of information rather than attaching a big value to it.
That's it, I think, isn't it? Useful information. And I've developed a bit of is it a rule, I don't know, or a way of being with it, is that if I hear something from somebody once, I'm a bit like, okay.
Yeah.
If I hear it twice from two different people, I'm like, oh, hang on. And if I hear it 3 times, I'm like, I need to sit up and take, I need to think about this. And one of the pieces of criticism I got when I was younger, and it was so helpful, was somebody told me, they were brave enough to say to me, when I first met you, I found you a bit intimidating. And the reason I found you intimidating is because I didn't know whether you liked me or not. And I was like, oh, okay. And then someone else said, when I first met you, I didn't know whether you liked me. And someone else said...
You're a bit standoffish.
Well, what I worked out through that criticism was that I used that not knowing as a defence mechanism.
Oh, go on.
So,
this has ignited the therapist in me.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would... unconsciously, so there's nothing about it that was like, I'm going to do this to people. And I didn't do it to everyone.
Yeah.
But if I felt a little bit uncertain of whether I was accepted or liked by somebody, I would turn the tables on that and make sure, again, all subconsciously, that they were uncertain about my standing with them. That's what I would do. So it was my own sense of not feeling accepted. I would make you feel... I would project it onto you and make you feel like uncertain about where you stood with me. And that was the intimidation of it. You know, so not intimidation in I'm being aggressive, but intimidation in I'm not quite sure what to expect.
Yeah. So people find you standoffish.
Yeah,
because you are being standoffish.
Yeah, some people did.
But when you understand the reason behind it, then it becomes a completely different thing.
Yeah, and I was able to figure that out about myself through conversation, but also just from that someone being brave enough to give me that feedback, which then has enabled me to notice myself when I do it.
That's so interesting.
Do you know, to go, hang on, whoa, you're doing that thing again, John. And make the unconscious conscious for myself. And that all came through someone being brave enough to give me that feedback.
Do you know, I love people who can be utterly direct.
It's great,
me,
isn't it?
Because giving feedback is really hard. Giving what might be perceived as a criticism is such a difficult thing to do, and I'm like massively conflict averse.
It's risky,
anyway.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But the most authentic, genuine relationships are with people who can tell me when I'm out of order. I've got a business partner called Laura. I couldn't function without her, and sometimes I make a decision, or I'm thinking of making a decision, and I will check it out with her. And I say, Laura, do you think I'm being reasonable, or am I just being a bit Joe? You know, and she will tell me. She'll say, no, Joe, I think you're a bit out of order, actually. And I'll ask her why. And it's such a safe relationship because we both know whatever we say to each other is genuine. If I tell her she's freaking brilliant and I can't manage without her, she knows I mean it. I'm not just being, blowing smoke up her butt. Sorry, that's a horrible expression. I don't even like that. I wish I hadn't said it. But I can hear from her and my daughter, but I think who I can hear criticism from probably depends on the nature of my relationship with them.
Whether they're on your team.
Yeah, whether they can deliver it with love, whether it's coming from a good place. I have to say, though, this is a bit of an aside, but it makes me laugh so much. I got called a busybody recently, and it's still making me chuckle because I think, well, I've got to a certain age, maybe I can be a busybody. So it's local neighbourhood, somebody had parked in a disabled bay, and I know him. And I said, "You're not disabled." Now, had he been really smart and quick, he'd have said, "Joe, not all disabilities are visible." In which case I'd have said, "So have you got a blue badge then?" But anyway, he said, "Well, I'm only here for a minute. What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, what if a disabled person wants to park? They can park in the bay next door." And I said, "Well, there's a parking spot just up there." "No, there isn't." "Yes, there is." So this went on. And anyway, I just left it and I walked away because I'm conflict averse. And I heard him say busybody. And it just really made me giggle. Now, personally, I think that's abuse, but rather than criticism. But it did really make me chuckle. And I think what's really important is a confidence. There's a confidence. I probably am a bit of a busybody, frankly. I think, well, fair enough. Maybe that was a bit of a busybody thing to do. But I do find it really obnoxious when people park in disabled bays. You know, so. But I think how you can receive that kind of thing does depend a bit on an inner confidence and understanding your inner narrative. The way you speak to yourself is probably an indication of how you receive other people speaking to you in a negative way.
Yeah, again, my experience would be that the bigger somebody's own self-critic and inner critic, the more difficult then criticism comes for them to receive because it triggers that inner critic that then goes to town on them. And whereas if your inner critic, I think, is lesser and more balanced, you've probably got more space to receive feedback from the world that you can work with.
Whereas if you're vulnerable.
Imagine if you've got if your inner critic's almost like an inner bully that's constantly chirping at you, telling you you're not good enough, you're crap, you're this, you're that, the other. Then when someone delivers criticism to you,
it just confirms it. It's like a confirmation bias,
and probably triggers that into. And if they're spending all their time trying to keep that inner critic at bay. Then, whereas if you haven't got that if that inner critic's much more balanced, because our inner critic's actually useful.
Oh yeah, I think you need a bit of an inner critic to keep you in tow, really.
Yeah, but out of control inner critic's a nightmare, and I wonder if that's where that becomes really difficult for people that have that perpetual, constant inner critic at play.
And I think I couldn't go for percentages, but I would say a vast majority of people I've seen in therapy have got a very loud inner critic. And I think most people who don't come to therapy have got a very vociferous inner critic. And I find it so sad that people can't be by themselves, can't be with themselves, because it's overwhelmingly awful to do that.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a psychotherapist, actually, and she's been training psychotherapy forever. She came and did some training on how to lead a stress-free life. We've talked about that previously. And she said the transformation for her of being trained to deliver this training was extraordinary. She said all the training in psychotherapy she's ever had, but she still hated being on her own. And what she realised is that by learning to manage your mind... that from being her own worst enemy, she became her own best friend.
Yeah.
And I think our inner voice is so powerful. So I have a bit of a theory about this. I'm hoping we've got time very quickly to discuss it. So, in our language, we talk about ourselves. We say, get a grip of yourself, have a word with yourself, be kind to yourself. And I suppose it's a combination of all sorts of Freud and Richard Schwartz's integrated family systems therapy. But imagine there's you and there's yourself, right? And yourself is a classroom of cheeky toddlers, which is amazing and full of energy and creativity and no boundaries. But when they get tired and hungry, they can get really, really nasty. And you are like the boss or the teacher. Okay. And if we were to divide this up into the brain, the boss is what we call the upstairs brain, the prefrontal cortex, where your executive functions live, and yourself is your downstairs brain, which is all about survival. Okay. And if yourself becomes too big, yourself needs a leader. This classroom of naughty toddlers needs someone in control. So if you are not in control, yourself takes over. And there's all that horrible chatter and that criticism, and they're not fed and they're hungry and no one talks nicely to them. And so it becomes a battle between you and yourself. And that's why people hate being with themselves or by themselves, because it's too painful. So we need you and yourself to be roughly the same size. And you are the one with all the skills that says, no, we don't need to do that right now. Or come along, let's just get on and get this job done. And I wrote a blog about it, about going to the gym. And myself is going, don't want to go. It's horrible. It's tiring. I'm knackered. And I'm going, but it's really good for you. And a little bit of exercise would be great.
Yeah.
And because I think me and myself are fairly balanced, eventually I went and I had to cycle in the wind, and my cell's going, told you we shouldn't have come. And I'm going, just be quiet, please. And I had to be quite firm with myself and quite boundaried to get to the gym.
Yeah.
But there are other times, like if I don't want to get out of bed and I'm really tired, and I've experienced an enormous amount of trauma over the last 3 years, and there are days when I haven't wanted to get out of bed, and I have had to say to myself, that's okay. You can stay in bed another hour. You need it. You know, that's important. So the way we talk to ourselves is critical. Sorry, there was no pun intended there. To not be constantly critical, to not be telling those little toddlers how bad they are, how awful they are, how unhelpful they are, but to recognise in ourselves the lovely things that we bring, and we all have something.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on this, because I also think I spent years trying to get rid of the bits of me that I didn't think were acceptable or good enough, or it's almost like they were sinful. I've got to get rid of them, fight against myself.
Yeah.
And I read a book years and years ago, and it completely flipped my thinking, which was this idea of embracing, almost embracing your shadow self, like embracing those bits of you and accepting. So going back to Phoebe in Friends, who's called, what was she called? Flaky. She goes, oh yeah, I am. Yeah. Like that ability to embrace those bits. Yeah. So even the fact that I can be standoffish sometimes with somebody because I'm intimidated or I feel nervous, or I'm okay. Yeah. Okay. That's how it is. Okay. Sometimes I can be overly critical. Sometimes I can be a bit judgy. Yeah. Sometimes I can be overly opinionated. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All of those things are true.
All right. Yeah. On the flip side as well,
I'm not saying they're all true of you.
No. But
all of those things are true of you.
No,
John.
but they are.
Yeah.
But they are. In the same way that I can be incredibly secure and deeply insecure. Yeah. All at the same time. Yeah. There's a strength in me that I probably haven't even tapped into it so strong. Yeah. And yet there's a brittleness to me as well. Yeah. Do you know? Yeah. And being able to accept the whole of me means that when somebody throws a piece of criticism at me or a piece of feedback, I'm able to go, okay. Yeah. Do you know? Thank you. Yeah. Now, if somebody's throwing abuse at me, that's maybe different. Yeah. And there's a boundary there. Yeah. But if someone is genuinely giving me some criticism, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, I think something about being able to accept the whole of self, is really important. Now, the other bit, though, in the 5 minutes or so we've got left here that I really want to talk about is I hated this thought when I first came across it, and now I think I've fully embraced it, so I want to get your take on it. Go on. I think the things that I'm going to say I criticise others for are only ever the things that I still haven't fully accepted about myself. Yeah. So in my 20s, I remember saying to my wife, Rachel, and she is brilliant because she gives me instant feedback, right? I remember saying, that person does my head in because they're so opinionated. And she looked at me, raised her eyebrows and just burst out laughing. And I'm like, what? You know, like what? What you on about? What? Yeah. She's like, you don't like them because they're opinionated. She's
what like, a woman. Yeah. I like Rachel.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
And actually, I think there's some real truth in the idea that what I might criticise you for or find irritating in you is actually just a mirror being held up to the bits of me that I struggle to be with or haven't fully accepted or can't quite cope with. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Well, I do actually agree. I remember my mum saying to me years ago, the things you find irritating in other people are probably habits that you've got yourself. So it's very similar, isn't it? That, that just makes you want to go around the world not getting irritated by anybody. But yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And I think people do hold mirrors up to us.
Yeah.
And I think it's
important. Do you know who irritates me? Yeah. Who I get irritated by? People who show off.
You don't show off, John.
Right?
Yeah.
But honestly, so really? if somebody's like craving centre of attention, I'm like, oh, they're doing me head in. How ridiculous. How ridiculous.
Do you think you do crave to be centre of attention?
Massively.
There we go then.
Loads.
You've made the point.
Loads.
Yeah.
Not always, but there's an absolutely part of me that loves it. Yeah. Thrives in it. Yeah. It's almost my happy place at times. Yeah. Probably not to the same extent it was when I was younger. Yeah. There's development with that. Yeah. But absolutely. Yeah. And all that someone's showing off is is an exaggerated version of something that's in me that I probably still haven't fully accepted. But what's interesting is people showing off now irritates me far less than it would have done 20, 25 years ago. So I find it really interesting, the giving of criticism as well. Like when we're criticising another person, is that actually about them and for them, or is that actually more about us? That for me is my question all the time. If I was going to criticise you, Joe, the question I think I have to ask myself is, am I doing this for you? Or actually is this just about my own issues?
And I love that because it goes full circle back to the book you mentioned in the beginning, which is about delivering something with love. And if you are, it is to help the other person, then rather than to make life easier for yourself or to reflect yourself. So I interesting as you were speaking about that, I was thinking, I find people who are really controlling irritating.
Me too. So that's my other thing as well.
And I know that I've got it in me, and I have to be really careful how I exercise that, because I do like to be in control, which I have to say is partly why I've loved the process with this, because I have relinquished all control. But that, I guess, comes down to trust as well, which is really interesting. I've also been told that I can come across as very brusque and quite scary, but I don't actually take that as a criticism. I find that quite useful. Especially, as working in prisons for all those years, you've got to find a survival strategy, and maybe that was mine. But I equally have to apologise for it sometimes, because it does intimidate people. So that's also interesting, isn't it? That's a criticism which, well, it was given to me as a criticism. I think it's a legitimate one because I know it can be unnerving for other people, so I have to keep an eye on it. So the control thing for me was really interesting, because I struggle with people who are trying to overly control stuff, and yet I don't see myself as overly controlling at all. So I was like, well, hang on a minute, how does that fit with my thinking? And actually, the interesting bit is, so I really value freedom. I really value the not knowing, the let's figure it out as we go, all that kind of stuff. But I like to be in control of the fact that there's freedom. And that's where, fascinating.
And that's where I was like, so somebody being controlling tramples on my control of the being space and freedom.
Free.
So again, it's a reflection of what's going on in me. And I think that's hugely challenging. But the brilliant bit about recognising that now is that, and I don't do this every time, I wish I did, but every time I'm irritated by another person, I can learn something about myself in a way that makes me go, okay, what's that about me? Help me understand myself more. So that becomes great feedback for me. I almost don't, it's great when people tell me and speak truth with love to me, but I almost don't need them to as well, because I can get that feedback from the world by the things that are bugging me.
But what a great tip to leave this podcast on is that when somebody criticises you, to see it as something useful to learn about yourself. And I think we'd share that tip, wouldn't I? I'd say catch that ball, have a look at it, examine what's true and what isn't, decide what you're going to do, but don't just respond. And
I think the tip for me would probably be if you hear it once, if you hear it twice, if you hear it 3 times, then that's where you sit up and take some notice with it.
Brilliant.
And don't dismiss it just because you don't agree with it. That would be the key, because I loved your idea that criticism is feedback that we don't agree with. I think that's absolutely spot on, and that for me, that's really actually changed my thinking about criticism now. So that whenever I feel that, I don't agree with that, then I'm able to kind of maybe pause and just go, okay, let me just ruminate on that a little bit and think through the truth that might be there.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Really love that. That's really helpful for me, and I hope it's been helpful for people listening.
See you next time.
You too.